everybody. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners on we have, fortunately, Father Ben Day from the Christ Episcopal Church from Kennesaw lead us in the invocation. And Father, please, those who are willing and able, please stand.
Good morning, and let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we begin with thanks for this day, for this community, and for the opportunity to serve one another and seek the common good. We ask you to bestow your blessing upon this gathering, that we would be people of compassion and humility, making this government and all who support it an example for our state, our nation, and our world. Where there is disagreement, O Lord, help us come to compromise. Where there is consensus, use it to strengthen the common bonds of cooperation and respect for the dignity of all. Most of all, God, remind us that we are servants of you and our neighbors here in Cobb County. Inform us to your will, that the decisions of this body would be made pleasing in your sight. All this we pray in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Father. A wonderful prayer. With that, John, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. The cases will be called in numerical order. The applicant is requested to stand and signify that they are in attendance. Then we're going to call for any opposition to signify they are here, so they may be counted for the official record. After the counting of the opposition, the applicant and any opposition will be asked to come forward to be sworn in, so they can present testimony to the Board of Commissioners. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. It's important to note that each side only gets 10 minutes to state their case or concerns. There's not a rebuttal process, and there's not a process to reserve your time. So convey all your information to the Board of Commissioners within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on an issue, you might want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after both sides have had their 10-minute presentation period, the board will start to discuss the matter at hand. From the discussion, they may ask one or more of the speakers to come back to the podium for additional information. After that, the board will make a decision to either hold, continue, approve, or deny the matter at hand. Today's printed agenda has two cases that have been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z31 of 2018, Joyce Hollett and Scott Hollett. That case has been withdrawn without prejudice by staff and will not be heard today. And rezoning case Z34 of 2018, Maverick Southeast LLC. That case has been withdrawn without prejudice by staff and will not be heard today. There are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued or held. They will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z56 of 2017, Oak Hall Companies LLC. That case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z56 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z3 of 2018, Punky Poo LLC. That case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So rezoning case Z3 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z8 of 2018, Lloyd Development Services. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z8 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z20 of 2018, Elevation Development Group LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the August 7th, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So rezoning case Z20 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z21 of 2018, W. Reed Coningsmark was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z21 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z26 of 2018, Austell Cosmetic Dentistry LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the August 7th, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z26 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z30 of 2018, The Key Auto Collision. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So rezoning case Z30 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z32 of 2018, Inline Communities LLC. That case was continued by the staff until the July 3rd, 2018 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z32 of 2018 will not be heard today. And finally, other business number 28 of 2018, Reyes Morales. That case was continued by the staff until the July 17th, 2018 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business 28 will not be heard today. I would like to ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off on your cell phones. The ringing does interfere with broadcast and presentations, so if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within the 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information about this requirement is located on the table in the back of the room. I want to remind applicants' opposition or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by this board at their discretion. With that, Mr. Chairman and Board, I'm ready to start the consent agenda. Thank you. Cobb County Board of Commissioners zoning hearing consent agenda for June 19th, 2018. Starting with land use permits on consent, LUP 6, Early Education LLC requests a land use permit renewal for the purpose of a daycare in land lots 50, 51, 94, and 95 of the 17th District. The property is located on the west side of Hurt Road, north of Plantation Road. Staff recommends approval for 24 months, subject to a maximum number of students permitted by state and fire codes. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to LEP 6? Let the record show there's no one opposed. LEP 7, Most Reverend Wilton D. Gregory, SLD, as Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta and/or his successors in office, request a land use permit renewal for the purpose of a Catholic campus ministry in land lot 97 of the 20th District. The property is located on the west side of Campus Loop Road, across from Paulding Avenue. Staff recommends approval for 24 months, subject to all parking to be within the driveway or at KSU. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here for LEP 7? Is there anyone here opposed to LEP 7? Mr. Chairman, there's no one opposed and the applicant's not present, so we'll give him a call.
Yeah, I just have one question, and this is for the legal representative this morning. I was noticing that the applicant's signature is different than the applicant's name is printed. Is that a legal issue? It doesn't say on behalf of, or, you know, is there like a power of attorney? I just want to make sure that whoever applied for this can, in fact, use this format. Is that a problem or not?
I will look at it. Generally, I mean, generally there are power of attorneys, but he doesn't state that it's a power of attorney.
I have no objection. I just want to make sure that we don't come back later on and say, well, we didn't meet all the legal niceties. That's probably not a legal term, but that's...
I think it's a legal term.
Oh, okay, all right. I just want to make sure that the application is thorough in content, and I just saw that. I was just going through the application.
We'll make a further inquiry on that
Okay.
and make sure that he has the authority to sign before we actually allow the.
But again, I have no opposition to it. I just wanna
Exactly.
make sure. Commissioner.
Yes, providing that this case is on consent, the applicant isn't here. I know we said we'd give him a call, but is it necessary that he be present if it's on consent and there's no opposition?
It's not required. I don't believe, right?
That's correct. That you all can either approve it or continue it as you see fit, but he doesn't have to be here since there is
I have
no
objection
objection.
I
either.
have no problem. Yeah. I'm not going to fight with an archbishop.
Okay. Then we'll just leave
I
that
just
on
want to go on
consent.
record as saying that.
Leave us Catholics alone.
Sorry about that, John. We'll return to our normal serious demeanor here.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, we'll just plan on leaving that on consent then.
Okay.
Okay. Moving into other business cases on consent, Other business, item number 25 is to consider a site plan approval for GM Ackworth LLC regarding rezoning application Z5 of 2018 for property located on the east side of Ackworth Dallas Road, and the south side of Cedar Crest Road, and on the west side of North Cobb Parkway, land lot 40 of the 20th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to site plan received May 15, 2018, with the District Commissioner approving minor changes, and all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 25? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Other business item number 26 is to consider a stipulation amendment for Meritage Homes of Georgia Incorporated regarding rezoning case Z117 of 2016 for property located on the south side of Hurt Road, east of Traymore Park, in land lots 784 and 785 of the 19th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to a lot-by-lot table of maximum allowable impervious coverage to be provided on the recorded subdivision plat, showing 45% coverage is meant for total combined lot areas. Stormwater management to approve building permits to ensure impervious surface does not exceed 45% for the total combined lot areas. And all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 26? There's one person opposed, Mr. Chairman. So maybe we'll have the applicant and the opposition meet outside and see if they can work out the differences.
Sure, okay.
And if they can't,
Otherwise, we'll put it on regular.
that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other business item number 27 is to consider a site plan amendment for C2 Holdings LLC regarding rezoning application Z118 of 2016 and rezoning application Z21 of 2017 for property located on the south side of White Circle, east of Noonday Church Road, in land lot 794 of the 16th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to site plan received May 15, 2018, with the District Commissioner approving minor changes. Letter from Mr. Kevin Moore dated June 13, 2018, and all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 27? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
And Commissioner Burrow has a comment, John.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would just like to say thank you to the applicant and their attorney, Mr. Moore, Canton Road neighbors, and the neighbors on Turner for working together to make this agreeable to all parties and for it being on consent. Thanks for all your hard work.
Other business item number 29 is to consider a stipulation amendment for Mr. Carl Bledsoe for New Horizon Homes Incorporated regarding rezoning application Z181 of 2006 for property located on the west side of West Sandtown Road, south of Carnegie Way, in land lots 394 and 395 of the 19th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the proposed house plans contained in the other business packet, with the District Commissioner approving minor changes, and all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 29? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Other business item number 30 is to consider a request from Nathaniel Tyson regarding an electronic billboard placement located at 2184 Cobb Parkway Northwest. The property is located on the west side of Old Highway 41 and on the east side of Cobb Parkway in land lot 175 of the 20th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to proposed LED billboard location site plan and exhibits contained in the other business packet. Maximum billboard height to be 25 feet for the north-facing and south-facing billboard faces, and maximum billboard square footage to be 240 square feet per billboard. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 30? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Other business item number 31 is to consider a stipulation and site plan amendment for Broadstone Windy Ridge LLC regarding rezoning application Z27 of 2015 for property located at the southwest intersection of Powers Ferry Road and Windy Ridge Parkway in land lots 985 and 1008 of the 17th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the letter from Ms. Catherine M. Zickert dated June 6, 2018. Explanation letter contained in the other business packet, which is page 4. Exhibits B through F in the other business packet, and all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 31? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
John, Commissioner Ott has a comment.
Now, just first off, I want to make sure you have the June 6th letter, right, for the clerk? If not, I mean, I have a copy. And the only other thing I want to do, Mr. Chairman, is we have some revised staff comments, and I'm not sure that the board has seen, so I'm just going to read them, and then I'll give them to the clerk.
Sure.
This is from DOT. Number one is recommend the applicant be required to meet all Cobb County development standards and ordinances related to the project improvements. Number two, recommend restriping the crosswalk and gore around the median at the southwest corner of Powers Ferry Road at Windy Ridge Parkway. Number three, recommend all trees, stairs, pavers, and other improvements within the right-of-way except concrete sidewalks be properly maintained by the developer, its successor, and assigns, and/or through a properly funded mechanism such as an annual maintenance bond paid for by the developer or any successor in title, properly authorized state of Georgia surety to ensure maintenance of these improvements. Number four, recommend applicant enter into a development agreement pursuant to OCGA 3617-13 for dedication of the following system improvements to mitigate traffic concerns. A, donation of right-of-way to accommodate a planned 10-foot multi-use trail, and B, traffic signal at Windy Ridge Parkway entrance should it be warranted at the future. And add to that, the applicant agrees to pay half of the cost of the light up to a maximum of $100,000. Applicant also agrees to maintain the improvements within the right-of-way referenced in item number 3 above, as well as secure an insurance policy in amount no less than $1 million, naming the county as an additional insured for any injury or property damage which may occur on part of the plaza that is on public right-of-way. And then in parentheses, says recommend the final conditions and types of agreement be decided and agreed upon during the plan review process. Number 5, recommend a 10-foot multi-use trail on the frontage of Windy Ridge Parkway. And the last one, recommend that the guardrail along Powers Ferry Road be removed if allowed by the final grade of the project, and ASHTO standards shall be determined during the plan review process when engineering plans are submitted to Cobb County Department of Transportation for review. If the guardrail cannot be removed, then the property owner shall paint the guardrail black. I believe we agree that you would replace it, correct? Because I don't think that the one that can be painted, can it? Right, so it should read, if the guardrail cannot be removed, then the existing guardrail will be replaced and painted black.
Thank you.
And the applicant has agreed, they've worked all that out with DOT.
We're good? Okay, so I believe now I can make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as revised.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? Call the question? Passes 5-0.
And Mr. Chairman, just one last thing on that one. I want to thank the applicant and the homeowners who spent the last 2 to 3 months working out the arrangements to get that in front of us.
Okay, regular agenda.
Yes, sir. All those folks that were on consent agenda, you're free to leave. Your business is done. And Mr. Moore, could you meet with the opposition for other business 26 and see if you can get something worked out? All right, thank you. Moving into regular cases, other business item number 29, rezoning case Z29, A&E Investments LLC request a rezoning from GC to CRC for the purpose of an auto repair, auto restoration, and motorcycle repair shop in land lots 60, 61, and 84 of the 16th District. The property is located on the south side of Jameson Road, west of Canton Road. Is the applicant present? The direction of the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z29? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Good morning. All right. So let me know when I can start.
Podium's all yours.
Thank you. So this is basically our final meeting. My name is Arkady Yakubova. I own the 892 Jamerson property. And we're here to have it rezoned to something that would allow the property to be rented out to other businesses. Hopefully various businesses that can rent out and produce income for the property. So that also at the same time can bring reasonable businesses that are not a nuisance to the county. So at 892 Jamerson, if you're facing the building, you look to the right, which is the adjacent building there. That is a current body shop as well. There is the second building to the right is also a body shop, and so is the third building to the right. That's a body shop as well. The fourth building that says NRC, that's a body shop. I believe that's a body shop as well that works on trucks and other cars that are kind of like AC repair shops that bring their cars there. To the left of the building, currently a mechanic shop went in there, and he's currently running the business out of there as well. So my intentions are to be able to get rezoned either for CRC or NRC with stipulations that we can allow various businesses in there, you know, without an issue of the person coming to the county and saying, hey, you got the zoning, but in the zoning doesn't allow you to open that kind of a business. So I would like to have something in writing that says that you can do car rentals, trailer rentals, equipment rentals, things like that, so that I'm not limited to what kind of businesses I can rent the property out to. The property currently has 3 different units that are 2,500 square feet each, which are mostly industrial units with no office space. And typically, this building was designed to do some sort of a mechanical work or body shop work. So for retail shops, it wouldn't be convenient to come to this building and rent it to make money from that area. Most of this area is designed to be automotive related. Whether you go a mile to the right on Canton Road, or whether you go a quarter mile back on Jamerson. So in this section, you cannot bring in other businesses at the moment to do retail business. Because most people that want to go to a retail shop, they don't want to be in an industrial area to go shopping for clothing or cut their hair or something like that. So that's why I was looking into CRC, but after talking to Judy, you know, we try to compromise and figure it out. So I did look at the NRC, non-residential commercial, which limits you to the type of business that can go into a facility like this. Where in CRC, it specifically states that you can do car rentals, you can do various businesses that are automotive related. There's a lot of businesses that are not automotive related there as well, but you would have to basically spend a lot of money redoing the building to like something fancy where a business can come in and say that spot works for me. So in this case in particular, I think a list of businesses should be added to the non-residential commercial zoning so that I'm not limited to who I can let in there to do business out of the location. And also, there are no residential areas, like when you go, I guess it's, let's see, is it north or west? Which way is it if you're going on Jamerson?
Pretty much west.
West. So if you go west on Jamerson, for good maybe quarter of a mile, that's how far the homes are from these locations. If you go to the right of Jamerson for about a half a mile, that's when the homes begin. So, and on Canton Road, whether you go a mile to the right or a mile to the left, there's all body shops and mechanic shops and car dealerships. I'm not interested in running a car dealership out of there because the property doesn't qualify for the car dealership anyway. So my goal is to make sure that we don't turn away people that want to rent the property based upon the limitations in NRC. So with that said, that we should consider allowing other people to, not only myself, but other people to come and open a small body shop out of there, because some businesses make you money, some businesses don't make you money based upon the location you're in. So in the notes, staff has recommended that we do NRC, but at the same time, allow body shop for the owner of the property. So I'd like to make sure that we're not limiting just the owner of the property to do a body shop out of there, but other people can come and do body shop out of there as well. Also, I'd like to add on there that that the property should also be used for auto upholstery, because that's a very minimal type of business that doesn't involve any kind of chemicals. It's just a matter of, you know, working with interiors and materials that you change on car interiors. Also, allow like a car wash maybe out of there as well, which can be done. It is a pretty good location for that type of business. Also, so these are things that I'm mentioning to you that are not in non-residential commercial. Those are the businesses that would be appealing for this type of property. So if I'm a business owner and I go to the county and say, hey, I want to open an athletic club, it's not in the NRC zoning, because athletic clubs involve equipment, people come in there working out. But it is in CRC, but not in NRC. So it kind of limits the property of its potentials, which the whole purpose of the property is an investment property to make money.
Sir, I'm concerned as you're speaking that you may not be clear on what NRC is.
No, I'm clear on what NRC
No,
is.
NRC is not non-residential commercial.
I know that.
Okay.
I know that. So what I'm asking for is a list of businesses that you guys would allow to function on the NRC.
As a stipulation.
As a stipulation, correct. Because the whole purpose of this property is to make money.
Right, okay,
At the same time, I would make sure that the renters that come in there, they don't create a nuisance for the county.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna let your comments be done, then I'm gonna let Commissioner Burrow lead this conversation. Make
Okay.
sure you understand exactly what it is we're trying
Sure,
to do here,
sure.
okay? So go ahead, you still have 2.5
So,
minutes.
you know, I'm not trying to make it difficult for everybody here. The whole purpose here is to function the community as a team, not as one, you know? So after talking to Judy many times, I did come to the conclusion of I may have to accept NRC, you know, instead of juggling back and forth. But I think there's ways to make it work where if an individual wants to open a trailer rental business out of this property, they should be able to go to the county and say, hey, give me a license for rental equipment. And the county will turn around and say, well, it's not an NRC, I can't give it to you. So I don't want to go through that where, you know, I'm losing a potential renter. So that was my main concern on something like that. And it brings business to the community, not just myself. You know, if I can open 3 units that have 3 functional businesses out of there, it's a growth for the community as well, not just me. You know?
Okay,
What else? And also, I have a current gentleman who's interested in storing classic cars. You know, he runs an internet business with his son, and he's in his 86. He's 86 years old. He enjoys, you know, storing classic cars, and basically, he wants to rent one of my units. And I said, we're heading for NRC. Go to the county, get your lawyers, figure it out if it works for you. You know, so in the lease, if I do lease it out to people, I'll make sure to put stipulations in there that they won't sell cars out of this property. You know, things like that. So, you know, it's a two-way street. I'm trying to make it work with Judy to kind of make sure that the businesses that go in there are functional businesses in the community. What else? And there are changes I'm gonna do to the property, which will make it better. We're basically gonna give it a additional entrance to the other side. I already talked to DOT about it. So I'm probably gonna end up spending about $50,000 making that property look better. So at this point, it just makes sense to kind of help each other out and gain something from it. And, you know, to do an additional entrance, to do concrete on the back, to get architectural engineers, planning, all that is gonna cost me a lot of money in the future.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for your
Okay.
comments, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Carol Brown with Canton Road Neighbors. At this point, I'm very close to changing my position to oppose. We supported the Planning Commission recommendations. Do you have time to load this for me? I'm sorry. I just want a closer view to point out. It's very short. We were happy with Planning Commission recommendations. I discussed this with Planning Commissioner Ms. Judy Williams and also with Mr. Peterson and with Commissioner Burrell, as well as several very lengthy conversations with the applicant. I understand the reason for staff recommending denial. The reason that auto collision restoration we felt was something that could be supported, if you look at the first slide, you'll see that it is indeed surrounded by other fairly intense uses, and there's no residential anywhere near it. The day before the Planning Commission meeting, I sent Mr. Yakubova a copy of the NRC code and uses, and he's apparently not read that. I really don't know what to say. Rezoning is not about making sure that the property has its highest and best use, as you all know. It's about trying to put appropriate uses to the zoning district and the land use. And I felt that the only reason the auto collision was defensible was because it's in an area where there is no residential property and that it be limited to the owner. The building is fairly attractive. There are a lot of automotive uses there. I can't verify that it's surrounded by auto body repair work. You all would have to do that, but this is one that I am going to leave it that I basically support the Planning Commission's recommendation, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I appreciate your comments. That I'll turn it over to Commissioner Burrell.
Okay. First of all, this is an enact, and that's why the NRC zoning is more appropriate and not CRC. Pardon? Neighborhood Activity Center.
That's for the future land use map, right?
Right. Who asked that?
Commissioner Cupid.
I mean-
On the map, I just want to make sure on the map, the MAC goes all the way over to Canton Road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And Canton Road is also
There
now
we
an
go.
enact.
Okay, thank you.
But most of the surrounding here is GC, which, you know, we need to, it's in for rezoning and we don't typically use that anymore. So the minutes from the Planning Commission, they recommended deletion to Z29 to NRC and had some stipulations. And the first one, auto collision and restoration work to be limited to this owner and occupant only, is, I think, the main step that the applicant has concern about. Also, number 7, since this is in an industrial area and no residents near it, the hours of operation are to be Monday through Saturday, 8 to 6, and closed on Sunday, and I'm agreeable to allowing that the hours Monday through Saturday, 8 to 7 p.m. That, I think that's very reasonable, and then still closed on Sunday. rather than saying you're restricted in your uses, and listing things that we would not want to see there, like pawn shops, tattoo parlors, things of that nature that we normally put as a step. I'd like to change the first step to auto collision and restoration work, this use only, and any other NRC use would have to come back to the district commissioner for approval. And I think that would work as far as if you had another use within NRC that you wanted to pursue, then you could come back to the district commissioner and discuss it. Of course, we would get input from Canton Road neighbors and make a decision on that and approve it as that. Come up, you need to come up to the microphone.
I understand what you're saying. Just was concerned about, suppose a person comes in and says, I want to do trailer rentals, and it's not in NRC specs. I read NRC to the T, word for word, and it's not in there, but it is in CRC. So how would I approach that without the applicant spending 6 months on getting a license from the county? That's why I mentioned it, making it simple, just having a list of businesses that can already go in there without us going through the board meeting.
Well, it could be NRC with the special contractors.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to save
it-
time and not go back and forth with the person that's willing to rent when he's gonna get deterred from the county because he has to wait for the commissioners to make a decision on, based upon, hey, let's think about what we're gonna let into this property. It would be so simple. I mean, trailer rentals doesn't involve any kind of mechanical stuff or.
You would still need to get approval
Yeah.
unless it's restricted.
I was trying to think of businesses that have less things to do with mechanical for a variety of things. Like I could put a sign out in front of the property that says for lease and a list of all the businesses that can actually go in there. And this way a person driving by can say, hey, that works for me, I'll do it. That's why I was thinking out loud that way.
Okay, well, I think rather than give you a list of what could go in there, I think, or give you a list of what we don't want to see in there.
Yeah, that's fine
If
too.
we,
I don't
if we
oppose.
say for
I don't-
this use only.
Yeah,
And any other use would have to come back to the district commissioner for approval.
so you just don't feel comfortable with,
Okay. Well, let me hear from the other commissioners is what
Commissioner Ott.
what their suggestions are.
I don't like the way this is going at all. Number one, some of what, I understand what you're asking for, okay?
Yeah,
But the problem is, we're crossing from NRC into CRC. We can't do that. There are things that are allowed under NRC. There's a reason why we zone it NRC, and those are the only things that should be allowed, number one. Number two, we never allow the district commissioner to allow uses that the board hasn't approved. It is always the case that if there's a different use than the one that's on the list, that comes back to the board as another business item. I'm not comfortable with what is being asked. Number one, like I said, it's crossing between NRC and CRC. That's not good at all. And then number two, I just think that you either come up with a list of what's allowed and it comes back to the Board of Commissioners. I mean, that's just the way it has to be, as far as I'm concerned.
Commissioner Rutherford.
Thank you. You know, I'm not sure what the solution is. I agree with Commissioner Ott, but the thing is, I've been through this area quite a bit, and there are lots of uses in there, and probably most of them are grandfathered in. It seems to me that the applicant's trying to do the right thing and get the right mix in there, but whatever goes in there is probably going to be less intensive when it's already there. So, I mean, that's been that way for as long as I can remember. So I don't know what the solution is, which one it is, but I think it ought to be less restricted and maybe talk about it being automotive related or mechanically related in that way gives you a better range. But whatever staff figures out or Commissioner Burrell figures out that fits the bill. But it is kind of difficult to keep coming back for different things that we didn't think of. But the whole purpose, as Commissioner Ott said, is to make sure that something doesn't come in that we didn't intend it to be there. And I'm not sure how that needs to be approached, but I do understand and have sympathy for what you're trying to
Just
do.
with all due respect, that's all.
Yes, but we're just trying to figure out, because these come back and bite us later.
No, that's what we're trying to avoid.
And that's
You know,
what
it's
we're trying
like,
to avoid, so.
it's like, when I bought the property from the owner, he didn't tell me that the building's been empty for 4 years and that I already lost my GC. So when I bought the property, I basically bought the troubles that came with it. And, you know, by doing our due diligence now, we're just saving the headaches in the future, you know, and spending a lot of money on having a meeting set up and going through the applications and stuff. The only other thing that I noticed was different is, you know, some stipulations, some laws are not always updated to kind of, to work better for the zoning. I don't know if they do update NRC with like things based upon what's going on in the community. Because, okay, we understand that nobody wants that building to have CRC. They wanted to have an NRC. But there's a lot of businesses that are not as dirty as a mechanical business that an individual can bring there, you know? That's why I mentioned the list of particular businesses that would be appealing to people in that area based upon what's going on there.
Well, you could have classic cars in there.
Yeah,
under
I
this
discussed with a
use.
gentleman specifically, I said,
And restoration work, for
Yeah.
reupholstery, that kind of thing could
right,
be in
exactly, so I
there.
would just have
I
to,
mean, that's allowed.
I kind of went through
Under
the
this use.
CRC list, and I'm not saying that we should take the whole CRC and just put it NRC. Just, you know, there's some businesses that are clean, that
We
are,
can't put CRC.
no,
This
I'm not
is
asking for that.
NRC.
I was
Commissioner Burrow, I
comparing
think what
to,
needs to happen is this needs to be held and come back to the board with a list. I
Yeah,
mean,
I agree.
he can sit down with you and tell you what he's
Yeah, I
looking
mean,
for.
I
He
was
can
just
sit down
trying
with,
to-
excuse me,
yeah, sorry.
and he can sit down with Ms. Brown, and y'all can decide on a list, but because we're gonna sit here all day going
I
back and
agree.
forth about what he wants to do, what he doesn't want to do. And, I mean, I understand exactly what you're asking for.
Right.
Some of it can't happen under NRC.
Right,
But I
exactly.
think we're gonna get a lot further with this happening, not here.
I agree. Okay, so I make a motion that we hold this, and for 30 days, ask you to come back with a list of uses that you would like to see, allowed under the NRC code.
Can
It's
I
not
get-
gonna be in CRC.
No, that's fine, I agree with you on
Okay,
that.
we have a second. Any further discussion?
I don't think,
Can I,
No,
Ms.,
we got a motion on the floor here.
Oh, okay,
You've
okay.
been more than eloquent, sir. We know what you're trying to do.
no, I was trying to say if I can get with Commissioner Barrow and
Yes.
kind of provide her the list today.
And that's what
see-
the motion's gonna allow you to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So with that, I'll call the question. Passes 5-0. Thank you, sir. See you next month.
Thank you, John,
You
and
bet.
ladies. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, rezone case Z33, Duncan Land Investments LLC, request rezoning from R30 to R15 for the purpose of a single-family subdivision in land lot 249 of the 16th District. The property is located on the west side of Wesley Chapel Road, across from Lock Highland Parkway. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z33? The director shows there's one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Had to start using glasses. Good morning, Commissioners and Chairman. For the record, my name is Richard Duncan. I am the owner applicant of Z33. I was originally requesting in R15 with approximately 2 acres for residential lot subdivision. This property was originally zoned in October 2013 in zoning case Z27. I pursued a R15 at that time, but only got a R20. I did develop the property in R20, but it was difficult to market with that. With only 3 lots, it made it really costly. I finally secured a contract a few months ago, and it was during that due diligence period of the customer that we discovered that the property had been reverted back to an R30 zoning. I lost that contract because the builder did not want to wait while we went through the zoning process again. Since I had to take the property back to zoning, I decided to try for the R15 again in order to make the property more affordable and affordable housing, and that there was a current zoning just less than 2/10 of a mile from me at the end of Wesley Chapel across from the Mabry Park, new Mabry Park there. And also the property that surrounds this property is a 10-acre tract, and the school, which is surrounded also by R15. But during that time, after submitting this application, I did receive another offer for one of my main customer, Lot 1 Homes, as the current, that is currently developed as R20. And the property is again under contract. Therefore, I would like to request the property be returned to the R20 zoning that I acquired in 2013. On the plat you see before you here today, to the south and west of the property is a 10-acre tract that is R30, and to the north is Garrison Mill Middle School, as I stated a while ago, which are both surrounded by R15. During the original zoning, we had plan review and got the plans ready to do. There was a site easement required on the property. I did acquire the site easement on the property, paid for it with Mr. Campbell, and got that taken care of. We installed the original site easement originally when we developed it, and as we was developing it, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Geisler, which is the principal at Garrison Mill, all three of us looked at it after putting the original easement in, and it did not look, there was still a high bank there, it did not look good. So we all three met out there and made a decision to cut the hill down more to make it more attractive for the school, make it more attractive for the area, and I agreed to do all the sodding and did a lot of extra work to make that look nice over there. If you see there's a big area over there that's resodded and all, I did all that to make that look appropriate. And to the east of the property across the street is Lock Highland subdivision, which is zoned R20. And this is the property, as I said before, this is the plat that I'm asking for right now today to be reverted back to the R20. But here on the back side is actually how the property is currently developed right now. It is convert all the infrastructures in, all the sewer, storm, water lines, everything has been developed on it. That was done back just right after it got zoned. We got the plans and developed it. But like I said, it was hard to market with the cost of that project only being 3 lots. There was a new stipulation letter submitted with this project, dated May. The original zoning was dated May 18, 2018. There were some changes from the original stipulation, seeing that most of them had already been addressed in the construction plans and with the site being already developed. Step 4 was changed to reflect the elevations which were sent to the commissioners from Lot 1 Homes, the builder that is currently under contract, to use for the elevations. That was slightly changed just a little bit, but we have sent the elevation. Ms. Burrell got them, and I think she forwarded them to the rest of the commissioners, all the other elevations. Also, step 6 and 7 on the original zoning case were combined, and as now step 6 on the original, or on the current one. This addresses the entrance sign, fencing, entrance landscaping. I have stipulated that these items are to be installed during construction of the house on Lot 1 because of the grading that lot needs to be done to ensure the monument fencing are not in the line of sight easement. There's a line of sight on Lot 1 also, and that lot needs to be prepared, cut down under construction before that entrance monument signage is put in there. Because I do not want to take a chance of that thing wind up getting in that line of sight easement, and I didn't want to restrict the buyer from being able to cut the lot down to be able to do his lot correctly also. Taking into consideration that this property was previously zoned R20 in 2013 and it is now developed and under contract as R20 developed, I am requesting that you approve Z33. That's all.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jill Flam. I'm the case manager for Z33 and also was the case manager for Z27 of 2013 for East Cobb Civic Association. We do not have a problem with the request for the R20 zoning for 3 lots. Our problem resides with the fact that the new stipulation letter has eliminated a lot of other stipulations that were originally agreed to in Z27, not just what has currently been developed. For example, there is no mention of landscaping or fencing around the detention pond, nor who will maintain it once the subdivision is developed. Also, what kind of facade will be put on the concrete in the detention pond if needed. It is eliminated what is considered a minor modification that a district commissioner cannot approve. There also was a tree in the front yard of each house, and of course, a reversion clause. So rather than suggest multiple stipulations to the current May 21st, 2018 stipulation letter, what we have recommended are minor changes to the stipulation letter dated October 14th, 2013. And I have submitted our comments to you. As step 1, just change to read R20 instead of R15. Step 2, to be changed to read 3 lots. In stipulation 6, that we recommend the district commissioner be allowed to approve what is going to be the monument-based sign, and that it is installed when the first building permit is a building permit is pulled for the first house, rather than waiting until lot 1 is developed, which may be actually the last house. In step 7, once again, asking that the district commissioner have approval and that the landscaping, including detention pond, be installed when the first lot is developed. The landscape plan, the fencing, subject to district commissioner approval. And once again, we are recommending that if a building permit for one house is not pulled within 12 months of this rezoning, that the property once again will revert back to the original R30 zoning. To sum up, ECCA recommends the application be deleted to R20, 3 lots with the site plan dated 6/12/18, renderings submitted 6/12/18, and stipulations from the Z27 2013 zoning be put into effect with the above recommended changes and all staff comments and revised DOT comments. At the time of the Planning Commission meeting, DOT had not seen the Z20 site plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Okay, when this, well, first of all, when this came in for zoning in 2013, it did have a reversion clause of 18 months. It has been developed, but it's been sitting there for 5 years. And it is surrounded by R30, and it was zoned R20 5 years ago. And the applicant let the reversion clause expire, and it has been developed for 3 lots as was granted then, but to me, there's no excuse for it to have still been sitting there undeveloped this long. And it, when the applicant came back in for rezoning and requested R15, was a huge mistake in my mind. My first inclination was to recommend denial or make a motion for denial. But then thinking about it, do we want it to sit there for another 5 years, maybe 10 years? And it did have the R20 zoning prior to this. And if we deny it and leave it R30, it may never get developed, and we wouldn't get any stipulations or conditions on the permit. So, the planning commission, I know, was split because they had not seen the R20 plan either, and the request was for R15. And that was definitely, would have been a recommendation for denial for R15. But having said all that, I agree with East Cobb Civic Association. The stip letter, the current stip letter submitted May 30th from Mr. Duncan does not have all of the initial steps from 2013. So rather than include that in my motion, I'm going to go back to the October 14th stip letter and the zoning minutes dated October 15th. And I have a packet to submit for the record with the clerk of all the pertaining documents for this. But I'd first like to read the revisions, if I may.
Sure.
Well, I guess I need to do it with my motion.
Okay.
So, if there's not any other discussion, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just looking at this a little bit differently, and as, I don't know if all the commissioners know, the dividing line between District 2 and District 3 is Wesley Chapel. So Commissioner Burrow represents the folks on the left side of the road, and I represent the folks on the right. And the folks on the right have brought to my attention that although there is some R15 and R20, there's a whole lot of R30 on this other side of the road that could potentially then come back in for zoning to R20. And they're concerned about the traffic on the road. With the recently completed entrance into Mabry Park, the traffic on this road is already going to pick up. And, to say that this lot is developed, it has cul-de-sac in it, and it has a detention pond, but that does not prevent it from being developed at R30. It's not like lots have been cleared for 3 lots. It's just, it's got a cul-de-sac and a detention pond, and it could very easily still remain at R30. And so I can't support changing the zoning from R30 to anything else because I'm concerned about the rest of the property all on that side of Wesley Chapel.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Oh,
Rutherford.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's,
I'll let you
sorry.
make the motion in a second.
Okay.
My concern is that it's been zoned R20 for 5 years, and it was approved back then. It's being requested to be rezoned because of the reversion clause. Why do we keep rezoning it? Why don't we have a reversion clause? I mean, if we approved it then and if we approve it now, that must be the intent that this board has, and I see no reason for stipulation 15 reverted back. I would support it as R20, and as is, whether it gets developed or not, it should stay whatever we rezone it. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, my line is, it was good enough for R20 before, why not now? So anyway, I'll let you make the motion, Commissioner. Commissioner, could we have a comment since we're all, I don't want you left out.
Supportive of R20.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Rural, that help you?
Okay, yeah. First of all, there was some question about DOT, but it's already been approved for site distance and all that at the entrance. And as far as development of sewer and what is in place now? Because it's my understanding that it is developed for the 3 lots.
The detention pond's already got the stone, decorative stone on it. It's already been decided with the decorative stone and everything.
Right. So, and believe me, I don't want to keep going back and forth with this, but it is zoned R20, and it was 5 years ago, and it's already in place or constructed for that. And like I said, we wouldn't get any stipulations or conditions. And I believe with if it stayed R30, they would get 2 lots. With R20, they're allowed 3. So I make a motion that we approve Z33 to R20 zoning, subject to the following. The revised stip letter dated October 14th, 2013, with the following. Number 8, add 6-foot fence around the detention pond will be vinyl coated chain link fencing. Number 18, add 1 4-inch caliber tree in each front yard. Number 19, for Lot 1, the side facing Wesley Chapel will be all brick. And item 20, landscape plan to be submitted within 3 months of zoning approval upon review and approval by the county arborist and district commissioner. Landscaping to be installed prior to the issuance of the first building permit for 1 house. Item number 21, if the building permit for 1 house is not pulled within 6 months, the property reverts back to original R30 zoning. And item 22, maximum of 3 lots, all lots to comply with a minimum of 20,000 square feet. Also for the record, I'd like to submit the site plan, elevations, and renderings dated June 12th, 18, and all steps and minutes dated October 15, 2013, minutes and stip letter dated October 14th, 2013 from Z27 to remain in effect that are not otherwise in conflict, and all staff comments and recommendations.
We have a second? I'll second it. Comments? All right, I'll start with Commissioner Cupid.
I do have one question with respect to the reversionary clause being based on pulling a building permit within 6 months. Because of the lapse of time between this and the prior zoning, I'm afraid if we put that other reversionary clause within such a short amount of time, are we going to be back here in the same situation in 6 months?
I think 6 months is ample time if he's got a contract with a builder for the 3 lots. And I think that is ample time for him to close on the property and pull a permit. He could have pulled a permit before the reversion clause expired 18 months, 5 years ago.
All right. And that
Not if
information,
you didn't have a buyer, you
I
couldn't.
don't know what was the reasoning behind that, and that wasn't made clear to me in the presentation by the applicant, and he didn't provide any information about pulling a permit within that short amount of time.
He develops them and then sells them, and he couldn't sell it.
And your stipulation is for a building permit to be pulled 6 months within the date of approval, and he's not a builder, he's the developer.
Right, but he has a contract with the builder who was going to build the 3 lots.
Okay.
Still has to be final platted. It'll probably take 30, 45 days to get.
Right. So I'm not a developer. I don't know what are all the constraints within that time frame. My only concern is us being back in the same position.
Commissioner Rutherford.
I too agree. I think it's ridiculous that we put a reversion clause when we've zoned it to R20, now R20 again. Why, if we don't want it to be R20, let's leave it R30, make up our minds. It's ridiculous to go back to R30 if we've zoned it now twice to R20. If that's not the intent, then why are we doing it? So
Well,
I'm having trouble understanding any logic behind stipulation number 21, especially 6 months when, you know, as well as everybody knows, it takes much longer than that sometimes to get a permit pulled with all other conditions that could apply. So I'm having difficulty wasting our time in the future possible because of that stipulation. So
Commissioner Ott?
Yeah, I just want to clarify my comments earlier because I was in the second 5 years ago, but 5 years ago, there was not the new development on Wesley Chapel up by Mabry Park, and there was not Mabry Park. And so already, the conditions are changing on Wesley Chapel. And so now you have two developments, you would have two developments at a greater density than the R30. And so that's why what I see is different from 5 years ago, is that this was, 5 years ago, this was just going to be in, this one area that was a small parcel. But now you have newer development up by the park and just the concern about the increasing traffic on Wesley Chapel.
I think
And we're
that,
talking 2 lots and 3 lots.
I think what I'm hearing is that let's just leave it, your motion to take it to R20. The concern is that if they don't do it within that certain period of time, then we'll be back again for the board, which, that's what we're elected to do, to hear these cases. There's no number on that, but I think that what I'm hearing is if we just take that reversion clause out, we'll just leave it at R20, we'll be okay. Because then that leaves it totally in the hands of the developer and the builder as to how to take that land that's R20. The intent is to revert it to R20.
It is, but within ample time. I mean, 5 years it's been sitting there and nothing's been developed as R20, and now we're back in requesting R20, which was initially requested R15. And that's not gonna fly.
All I'm saying is that we'll just rezone it to R20, and then it's sort of like, it's a compromise between R30 and R15. We agree on R20, and then we let it sit there, and whatever happens, happens. The market conditions 5 years ago are not what they are today. I think that was part of one of the reasons why 5 years ago they couldn't build, because they're still coming out of the recession. Whereas today, it's a hot market, and you've already told us that the developer has a contract. So let's let him, let's not put undue pressure on him, just take out the reversion clause, and then the motion, I think, will pass.
Well, I'd like to see a reversion clause in there because I don't want it to sit. He could have come back under other business and asked for an extension on the reversion clause if he didn't have a buyer for the 3 lots, and it would still be zoned R20.
Then I'll be prepared to make a substitute motion, Mr. Chairman. If the Commissioner doesn't see it.
What I don't want to do is,
Well, what about the recommendation for a year?
What about our recommendation, leave it where it is?
all I'm saying is that all your arguments have merit, and we support all of them except for one sentence. And that one sentence, helps the developer to sell, because the intent is to develop the parcel. If we put some stipulations on there that might prevent that, then that's we're putting a burden on.
Let me just kind of chime in here and I think I understand what Commissioner Burrow is trying to do with his reversionary clause. One of the things that happened when the recession hit was we had all these properties that were zoned that never got developed. And so what happened was, when you have a zoning category on a map, a developer can come to adjoining property and say, well, you zone that R20. Well, if it didn't get developed as R20 during the recession, the idea of the reversionary clause was that goes back to what it was before, so you kind of reset
Right.
the map, because what happens is once the board has rezoned something, it sets a precedent. Well, if so you don't want to be able to use, you don't want someone to be able to use that to all of a sudden come to another place because you zone something R20. So what you're saying is, yes, I understand what the rest of you are saying, that R20, if we agree with R20, let him go in and build it. More than likely, he's going to be able to build it. He can probably meet the 6 months window, or even if it was 9 months, whatever. But the intent of reversionary clauses in the past was to keep from having something sitting on a map that all of a sudden then can be used against us somewhere else where we really didn't want it, but they can say, well, you have R20 on there. And, R20 may not be justified, or whatever the zoning is. But that's kind of where the reversionary clauses came from.
I've heard precedents over and over again, and it's not legal. Every zoning case stands on its own, and every zoning case is taken under advisement of this board. And if we zone it R20, then to me, that only sets a precedent for this lot. Every other zoning case in that area would come back before us, and it would meet your criteria, our criteria, or it would be zoned. The Fact is, it's R30. If you wanted R30, leave it R30. If you wanted R20, zone it R20, which this would be the second time it would be zone R20. Why go back to R30? It just makes no sense to me unless I'm missing something somewhere. Commissioner Ott's argument is a precedent. I disagree. I think a precedent is not set. Every zoning case is on its own legally. And it's up to us to make sure that it doesn't set a precedent if we don't want it.
Okay, let's take I need about 1 minute break here, all right? Or take a 5 minute break here, and then we'll resume this discussion.
Mr. Peterson, can you please explain what we're doing here with the 6-month reversion clause? And if this is approved today, the applicant can pull a building permit, the renderings, elevations, everything's been submitted.
That's correct.
And he has a contract with Lot 1 to purchase these lots and build on them. So all he has to do is within 6 months, and he could do it tomorrow if this is approved today, is be issued a building permit for one lot.
That is correct. If the board approves this case to your motion today, then Mr. Duncan can come into our office tomorrow and get a building permit for a model home. And then once he gets that permit, then the reversion clause does not matter anymore because that condition has been met.
Thank you. So I would like to leave that in as number 21. And I'd also, for the record, like to say that I heard from no one in Lock Highland as far as Commissioner Ott's comments. I've only heard and spoken with East Cobb Civic Association, of which they are a member, I understand, but I got no emails or phone calls regarding Z33.
Okay. Did you want to, you said you might want to make a substitute motion. I'm going to give you the
Well,
opportunity.
doesn't this have to go down first? We have to vote
Vote
on
on
my
it.
motion.
No, you don't. Substitute motion, you do not have to.
Okay, hold on a
Okay.
second. I think the substitute motion, we can insert that now before we do vote on
And
the
they
main
become
motion.
nested in you.
So you're amending the main motion that's on the floor.
No, ma'am, I'm making a substitute motion. Two separate motions.
All right, we're going to take another short break here while we go back to Robert's Rules of Orders, as I'm looking at my chart here.
I've done it many times.
Right. Just want to make sure we're on the same sheet of music here. This involves the law.
If I amended, that's different.
Commissioner Weatherford is very familiar with Robert's rules. I'm not.
He's correct.
Correct, there it goes. If it
All right,
becomes
my
nested,
rule book here says,
this one's first. If it fails, then you go back to Chris.
But this one hasn't failed because we
It
didn't
hasn't
vote.
been voted on, ma'am. What happens is the substitute motion is first. And then Commissioner I could make another substitute motion, there would be three. And it goes in order, the last in, first out.
Okay.
yeah, we're good. So I'm going to let,
Oh,
all right, so Commissioner Weatherford has a substitute motion.
But yes, I have a second.
haven't
I
made it yet.
second it.
He hasn't made it yet.
I second it
You can't second it and you said it. All he's gonna do is.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion
already.
to approve. Hang on a second. Get it out of my file cabinet. Z33 is presented by Commissioner Burrow with the deletion of stipulation 21, the reversion clause.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. We have a second. Is there any discussion on that?
And like I said earlier, my no vote is to the zoning going to R20 at all.
Well, this motion is for this.
No, I understand that. I'm just
Right.
saying when I'm voting no, I'm not
Okay.
voting against the substitute motion. I'm
Okay.
voting against, I was going to vote
Pay me
against.
if you did.
All right. So, Commissioner, anybody else, any other comments? Then I'll call the question. It passes 3-2. All right. Last case, I believe, in regular, right?
Yes, sir. Okay, rezoning case Z35, the Kroger Company requests a rezoning from NS to CRC for the purpose of a fueling center in land lots 1029 and 1060 of the 16th District. The property is located on the east side of Roswell Road and on the south side of Robinson Road. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z35? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
city clerk. Gotta pity them. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good to
Welcome
see
back.
you. Members of the board, for the record, my name's Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff, and Bally, and represent the Kroger Company concerning this application for rezoning. I have Mr. Ron Hawkins from Kroger with me today, and Ally Daughtery, who's with our engineering firm of Robertson Lawyer Roof. So the three of us will be able to respond to any questions that you may have. This is an application that was heard, considered, and recommended 2 weeks ago for approval by the Planning Commission. This is an application for rezoning specifically for purposes of a fueling center. But in order to address it most appropriately, in discussions with staff and with the owner of the shopping center, which is a group called Brixmore, we decided, since the shopping center was rezoned to NS back in the 1980s, that it would make sense, and staff, I think, is supportive and appreciative of this, to include the entirety of the shopping center along with the fuel center site, which is a part of that 14.55 acres. It's known as the Pavilions at East Lake Shopping Center. At the southeastern intersection of Roswell Road and Robinson Road, it was zoned from O&I to NS in 1983. This property is located within the confines of a community activity center. On the future land use map, as you can see, it is shown as the 10,000 square foot building where that arrow is now. That will be demolished for purposes of the installation, construction, and finishing of the fuel station. And of course, we're asking for zoning commensurate with the future land use map for CRC within a CAC, as you discussed this morning. We have support from the staff. We have support from the Planning Commission. We have support from the East Cobb Civic Association. And we have support from East Lake Plaza, which is the shopping center across Robinson Road from us in terms of the manager of that writing a letter. All the information I've mentioned thus far is a part of the package that I've handed out to you. Hopefully, you've had an opportunity to review our stipulation letter. I met with Commissioner Ott and Ms. Swanson yesterday to go over that. There's going to be some nuanced language changes, which I think may indicate a direction which we may be going in terms of a little more specificity with respect to certain wording that's used in stipulations. I'm sure the Commissioner will get into that in a minute. The architectural style and composition of the fuel center is as seen, as depicted on the handout that I've given to you. That was submitted with our consolidated stipulation letter, but also originally back in April 23, 2018. So that hasn't changed. It essentially is the same architectural rendering that you saw in connection with the Kroger rezoning at Terrell Mill and Powers Ferry of the mixed-use development that you approved earlier this year. We've covered the hours of operation within the stipulation letter, and there's no opposition to that. We talk about there'll be no stacking of vehicles on any of the public rights-of-way, nor on the apartment complex that you can see is to the south or the southeast directly behind us. That is a gated apartment complex known, well, the name I don't have here at the moment, I'll get that to you in just a minute, but we've got no opposition from them either in terms of our contact with them. There is a possibility with respect to construction vehicles that we may reach agreements with Brixmore to utilize portions of the parking lot, but that hadn't even been breached, much less decided. In terms of the fuel station itself, it's going to be lighted, of course, but we'll be submitting a photometric plan during the plan review process. It'll consist of crossover LED ambient lighting to ensure that there is no illumination that gets back into the multifamily development to our rear. We are going to be utilizing signage as shown in the rendering you have in terms of the signage on the fascia of the building, which is not on top of the canopy, it's on the fascia, which is the Kroger icon and the fuel prices. We will have a presence on the main entrance to the shopping center, a panel, and we anticipate also, consistent with the county sign ordinance, erecting ground-based monument-style signage at the point of ingress and egress closest to the fueling station. It will be the main point of ingress and egress for us. The landscaping will come back to the district commissioner for review and approval. We had an issue regarding, there was confusion between outside storage and outside display of merchandise. The planning commission said no outside storage, which we're fine with. There shouldn't really ever be any within the confines of either fueling center or shopping center. But there is, under your ordinance, an allowable amount of outside display of merchandise. So what the planning commission has done is gone a little step further. We had an inordinate amount of outside storage between the Kroger and the fueling center at the Powers Ferry Terrell Mill store. Here, with this fueling station, the Planning Commission recommended that outside display of merchandise be limited to what your code allows, and we're agreeable to that. The stormwater management, stormwater is handling the site by a master detention facility that's located within the Azalea Springs Apartments, which is the multifamily to our south and east. So this has already been calculated. We're actually not increasing impervious surface. The 10,000 square foot footprint is there, but we are disturbing more than 5,000 square feet. So that does bring in water quality and stormwater management, but we're agreeable to following their recommendations. This proposal actually reduces impervious surface because of the demolition of the 10,000 square foot building. There'll be, as a component of water quality, an oil gas separator, as you'd have to have really with any type of fueling center. We've agreed to a lot of uses to be eliminated, and this wasn't the easiest because we're dealing with the entirety of the shopping centers. I'm dealing with New York property owners who own a lot of shopping centers in this part of the world. So I had to get it by their attorneys as well. Their primary question to me was, well, this was zoned back in 1983. Why weren't these addressed then? And I explained that it's a different age and a different time, and there were no stipulations that were added to zonings back then. It's quite unusual. But anyway, the ones prohibited, we're not going to sell any alcoholic beverages from the fueling center. The shopping center will have no flea markets, pawn shops, weapon, gun, or knife sales, except within the context of a sporting goods store if one comes there, or no animal hospitals or kennels as long as we can have a pet store, meaning the shopping center. No adult entertainment, such as which displays nudity, and no pool halls. So the owner of the shopping center was agreeable to those, as is Kroger as they pertain to the fueling center. I don't want to get controversial, but we do have a reversion clause here, and here's the reason. There's a reason for it, and it really came from the East Cobb Civic Association. What if Kroger, or what if this is not used as a fuel station anymore? This is not a site easily repurposed. So we said if there's either Kroger or any other entity for a period continuing for 24 months continuously, then this simply goes back to retail. And I don't know how you repurpose fueling station. I don't think you can probably do that, so it probably means the demolition of that and the removal of the USTs. But if you want to delete that, that's fine, but that's what East Cobb would like to see. We have I won't call them boilerplate, but you do have certain situations within which the district commissioner can make minor modifications, and those are pretty close, if not identical, to what you're typically seeing. This is appropriate from a land use planning perspective. It's in CAC, Planning Commission, staff, ECCA, everyone's on board, including nearby owners of shopping centers and other developments. So we do ask that you follow your Planning Commission's recommendation to the extent that you feel comfortable doing so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
There's no opposition.
Oh, okay, all right. Commissioner Ott.
All right, just stay up there, Garvis.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. And as Garvis said, I'm going to have some changes to a stipulation later. I just want to ask, I just thought of something while you were talking, because we are doing the entire shopping center. And Garvis or John, you can answer this. You know, a lot of times shopping centers that were built in the past, John, have zero lot lines and some other things that has all that been checked, or what I don't want to happen is during plan review to all of a sudden find out that there's a variance required because an existing building doesn't meet what the current code is. So what I'm thinking about doing is put a stipulation in there that rezoning the site to CRC with the proposed changes to this portion of the property with everything else approved as is. Because my concern is that all of a sudden, the staff in doing their plan review is going to find that, you know, the buffers between, you know, it doesn't have the 35 feet if there, you know, because there's residential right next door, and it doesn't have the 35, it may not have the 35-foot buffer, and I don't want them to be coming back and all of a sudden saying, oh, well, you know what I'm saying? You okay
Yes,
with that?
and yeah, if you do rezone it to the site plan, then we're covered.
Right, but the site plan that's on file is just for the fueling station. That's where I'm going with this.
I got you.
Okay, and that's what we originally, I was gonna do. But as Garvis was talking, he reminded me of the fact that this is doing the entire site, and the only site plan that we have is really just for the changes.
Yes,
So that's,
sir.
I'm gonna put a condition that, the remaining part of the property is zoned to CRC as is.
Yes, sir.
Does that work?
Yes, it will.
When it was zoned from ONI to NS, it was zoned to GC setbacks at that time, but it is underparked because of the evolution of restaurants and retail. So
Right,
that-
I'm just
that's
thinking about,
helpful.
because when the board did the shopping center across the
That's
street
helpful.
from the Terrell Mill site,
Yes, sir.
there were a whole lot of things that weren't, pre-existing conditions that were not in compliance. So,
Yes, sir.
all right. So I'll make a motion to approve, the Z35 from the NS to the CRC, subject to, the stipulation letter, June 4th, 2018, with the following changes. And just kind of as a note to the board, what I'm doing is, as a result of the other business item that we saw for Broadstone, words like substantial conformity and all that caused a problem. So what I'm doing is I'm removing any ambiguities in this stip letter so that things are going to be more like as depicted and stuff like that. So in stipulation number 2, we're going to take out the word substantial conformity and put in as depicted. In stipulation number 4, it's going to be changed to, and I'll give the clerk a copy, shall be as depicted on certain architectural renderings / elevations, which was submitted under a separate cover on April 23rd, 2018. In stipulation number 5, we'll say finished floor elevation of 1,055 feet as depicted in that certain sightline study which was submitted. And then a separate paragraph under stip 5, the hours of the fuel center shall be. And then another separate paragraph under stip 5, construction regarding the fuel center occurring. And those are just removing kind of the wiggle room that was in there. Stipulation number 6, the fuel center lighting shall be in conformance with the photometric plan submitted under separate cover during the plan review process. Stipulation number 8, may be erected on the fuel center site if in compliance with the Cobb County sign ordinance. And number 15, Garvis mentioned this, but I'm adding to the list, no pool halls. Then a new stipulation, signage on the canopy shall be as depicted on that certain architectural rendering elevation, which was submitted under separate cover on April 23rd, 2018, with a copy attached. And then a new stipulation, which is removing the dumpster part of stipulation number 9 and making it a standalone, and it shall read, dumpsters shall have rubber lids conform with all provisions of the Cobb County Code Section 134-218-13B and be consistent with the architectural style and composition of the pavilions. There shall be no outside storage allowed. Outdoor displays complying with the provisions of the Cobb County Section 134-276J will be permitted. And all other staff comments and recommendations. And then the final one would be that the remaining portion of the site not depicted on the submitted site plan will be zoned to the CRC category as is. Does that work, John? Okay, that's my motion.
You have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call a question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you, Garvis. All right, and now we're going to bring back one item from consent.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. This item is other business item number 26, and this is to consider a stipulation amendment for Meritage Homes of Georgia Incorporated regarding rezoning application Z117 of 2016 for property located on the south side of Hurt Road east of Traymore Park in land lots 784 and 785 in the 19th District.
By way of background, the subject property was rezoned to RA6 for a residential subdivision with many stipulations in 2017. The detention facility was designed and approved for 45% impervious coverage over the entire subdivision by stormwater management. The applicant would like to average the impervious surface percentage over all of the lots in the subdivision. This is due to the final design of the house footprints, which were approved larger than the RA6 zoning code. The applicant has provided a proposed impervious surface chart to stormwater management, which demonstrates the impervious surface is proposed to be 42.94% over all the lots, which is under the 45% maximum. Stormwater management is supportive of the proposal. If approved, all previous conditions should remain in effect that are not in conflict with this amendment. The staff would ask the Board of Commissioners to open up a public hearing and consider the proposed stipulation amendment. There was one person opposed earlier, and the applicant is present.
I believe that the applicant with it, are you going to make the comment for him, Kevin, or is he like to make it himself?
I'm just going to introduce the comment for
Okay,
him.
sure.
As we discussed, since it's a little bit different. After our discussions that we've had with Mr. Bob Korn, it's my understanding, and I encouraged him to make known his concern, even though he actually will be supportive of this specific proposal. He has a concern more community and area wide, and he wants to make that known, and I fully support that. So with that,
Okay. I just have one technical question. Should we make a motion first to put it back on consent and then hear the comment, or does it matter the order that we do this, hear this comment?
I mean, I would just vote on it separately from consent, since we're hearing from both parties.
Okay, so.
So you'll make a motion to approve the other business as just a separate main motion.
All right, but we have to bring it back to consent.
No, we don't have to.
We took it off.
It was pulled from
Right,
consent,
right.
so when a motion is made by whomever to approve OB 26.
Oh, okay, I get you. It's just the main motion.
Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
got you. All right.
obviously, if there are any questions from this, I'm happy to answer them. And
Well, I was
certainly
confused,
stormwater
but now I'm
management.
not anymore, so.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Bob Korn, lived here in Cobb County, South Cobb for about 50 years. It's been a rather intense couple of days working with Mr. Moore and Jason Wadsworth at the Meritage Homes. First of all, I want to endorse Meritage Homes. I've been on the job site. They've done an excellent job at building the good quality homes. The discussion we had on 117 early on was that this is going to be a set of starter homes. They've actually promoted that on up, which is what we needed in the area, was better than starter homes. So the concern has always been, though, that in March of 2018, the Board of Commissioners here approved the Sweetwater Basin Flood Study, Phase 4. You spent $240,000 on that. That is based on the 2009 epic flood is what they will quote. It wasn't an epic storm. If you haven't lived here during that time, we didn't have a lot of storm. What we had, and what the Fed said, was that the headwaters of this is what was causing this problem, was coming from the building that we've been doing in the area. Ole Creek is the headwater of Sweetwater, and it's just a couple of miles down the road is where that flood area was at. Concern that I had, that I've shared with Kevin and Jason, was that we actually had somebody that was killed during that flood, who was a friend. My friend's daughter died during that flood. The elementary school that I've lived here around, I've never seen the floodwaters even touch that school. It went over the roof there. So I think as we build, we should start considering these high-density areas. Commissioner Ott, I know you oppose 117 on the RA6, and I think there's a good reason why we should start considering those. So I wanted to get this on record that the concern is the stormwater area. The not following what our density, or what the pervious densities have to be of 45%, even if it's off a few percentage points, is something we should always be concerned at and take a deep dive at this. But also, in this particular one, this is the Mr. Moon, who used to be my neighbor for 50 years. He owned that 40 acres. There's 40 acres in there. There's 23 under development in there for these houses. The rest, I assume, is always going to be green space in there. So we probably have what we need there to make that absorption of that water. And they've built a fairly good sized retention pond for that 40 acres in there. So after long discussions, I'm going to support this, but I did want to get on record that there is a concern on this flooding. And I don't know what that report's going to show on the one you just funded for $240,000, but I think you should take a good hard look at that. And again, I'll tell you where my quandary was at in this was, had a quandary in, we have an excellent builder in there, which is what we need in South Cobb. We have excellent homes being built in there. But the concern was building these high densities in here and what the impact's going to have in that area. Because the farther we go south in Cobb, the worse it gets on that flooding. So again, I want to thank you, and I'll cut it short here. If anybody's got any questions, I'll stop for a moment. Otherwise, I'll exit.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your comments.
Thanks.
So I believe I'll turn this over to Commissioner Cupid. I'm sorry? Oh, it's staff comments, all right.
Mr. Chairman and Board, the staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve this request, subject to a lot-by-lot table of maximum allowable impervious coverage to be provided on the recorded subdivision final plat showing 45% coverage is met for total combined lot areas. Stormwater management to approve building permits to ensure impervious surface does not exceed the 45% for the total combined lot areas, and all previous conditions to remain in effect, not in conflict with this amendment.
Now I'll give it to Commissioner Cupid.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, if we can have someone from Stormwater approach. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Commissioner. I'm Andrew Heath. I'm filling in for David Brayton today for
Okay.
Stormwater Management.
Thanks for being here today. This is the first time something like this has come to my attention, and I can understand why Bob Corn has concerns about this property, and particularly even in light of the map, and knowing how susceptible the entire district is, but particularly as you go towards Austell, just the amount of stormwater that area does get from basins in Cobb and even beyond. So my question here is, how did stormwater arrive to support this application?
Yeah, we do support this. We view it as the applicant is seeking to fulfill the spirit of the code, if not exactly the letter. So rather than try to meet the 45% per lot, they would be allowed a little over here or a little under there, and then for the whole development, they would be under. And actually, they're proposed to be slightly under the total amount that they could.
Sorry, sir, if you can just come a little bit closer to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can't hear me. So the way the applicant is proposing to do is, instead of trying to meet their requirements per lot as the 45% maximum per lot, they would be able to have a slight amount more, maybe on one lot, slight amount less on the other, so that over the whole development, they're actually proposing to come in slightly under what their maximum is.
I saw it at 42%.
Right.
Okay, and so the detention would be adequate to cover 42% of impervious area on all of the lots
Yes, ma'am.
overall, which is less than the 45% per lot.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know I talked to Dave prior to our meeting. There's a table that's going to identify the impervious, pervious, I don't know, I can't collect my words, amount of property that's permitted on each lot.
Right.
Well, I'm suggesting that we'll put in some language in this to alert each property owner that they're going to be subject to varying limits on impervious space. Beyond just having the table, if a property owner were to come in and say they wanted to put an addition onto their property, what would alert them within your department that they could or couldn't do it based off of what impact they're going to have on their property based off of this?
Right. So right now, the way that would work is when the notation and the table are added to the final plat, then with the plat being a publicly record document, so that if a homeowner wanted to purchase a lot or develop it, that sets the constraints for that subdivision and that lot. And so essentially the way it would work is when someone went to apply for their permit at the county, the appropriate personnel would pull the plat, look at that, and try to see what the requirements are for that lot based on its zoning and so forth, and then they would see that table. So right now, that's the way it is.
Okay, so if they were to be over 45%, then they wouldn't be able to add any additions onto their lot?
They would, they're on the table, the applicant would have to, on the table that they're going to add to the final plat, it would specify, a certain amount per lot. And so that lot would be constrained to that. So if there was a lot that was smaller, or I shouldn't say a smaller lot, a less amount of impervious area, then they would be constrained. So that could be, a constraint on that lot theoretically.
Okay. I've talked to the applicant to add in some additional stipulations to alert the homeowner about the impervious space. My whole concern is just making sure that even though this is meeting the spirit of the law, that there isn't going to be any true stormwater impact to those that live on this property and the surrounding areas based off of what's going on. Are you confident or stormwater confident that the detention is adequate to prevent any additional impact based off of this change?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Odd has a question.
No, I just have a comment. Just Commissioner Cupid, I have 2 developments that this was done in the past.
Oh, okay.
And it's been nothing but a problem. And it's not because of the builder. The builder does a tremendous job when they build the lots. It's the homeowner, because the onus is put on staff to catch it. And they may or may not, because it depends on what the homeowner does. If the homeowner puts in a patio, they don't have to have a permit. A patio is impervious. Okay, and then what happens is, if one lot goes over, now requiring another lot to be less, well, that other person doesn't know that now they're less. There's this table, which, yes, it's a public document. And then what we've found on the ones in District 2 is the next homeowner, when the house is sold, now you're even further away from a developer that's trying to do right. But now you're in a second homeowner, and they clear trees, they put there's just, it is very difficult to manage. And it all comes back on the staff and an unwitting homeowner, because not every homeowner does gets a brand new survey or gets this table, and what we've turned into is all of a sudden we have a problem, and in an area where, and to Bob, yes, it has a flooding problem, but we also had 22 inches of rain. So there was a reason for the epic storm in 2009. But so even with a detention pond, yeah, that might solve the water in the general area. But when you start talking about individual lots, if someone adds something that puts them over the patio or whatever, now their neighbor all of a sudden has a water problem. And now you're getting a call because the neighbor says, what can I do? Their house is dumping water. And you can do nothing because that's a civil issue. And so I understand what the builder's trying to do, and I think the builder would do a tremendous job of managing that, but the problem comes further down the road. So I can't support it, not because I don't think the builder can do a good job, but I can't support it because just what I've seen in District 2.
Okay.
Mr. Burrow.
Well, first of all, I know that these are decided on a case-by-case basis, but I've had several requests to do a combined overall impervious and did not agree with it in my district. And I'm sure this is a great development, and I don't want to infringe on another commissioner's district, but I wouldn't do it I have not done it in my district because I didn't even think it was allowed. I mean, it is as a variance, but I too can't support it.
Just a question to staff, or even whether it be stormwater or zoning. Is this permissible? If the stipulation did not state otherwise, is this a permissible approach to addressing impervious surface?
I won't speak for zoning, but essentially the way we approach it now, we would approach it as each lot, when it's zoned under a certain zoning classification, each lot has to meet that requirement for the lot. So whatever that zoning may be, if it says the impervious area is 45%, then that lot can build everything up to 45% coverage, and each lot is just follows by that zoning.
Okay. And, you know, the question that, or a point that Commissioner Ott raised is, even if total impervious is addressed on the site, that there could be impact from neighbor to neighbor. Can you address that? How does the percentage that's associated with the zoning category impact stormwater between neighbor and neighbor?
Within the development, that would have to be something that's just kind of worked out with the grading that's done with each lot. So with the way this would happen is the builder would have to come to community development, make their application for a building permit, and part of that would be submitting a site plan that we would have to review. And the site plan would, you know, address grading issues and things like that to make sure that we're making the water go where we want it to go on the lot.
Okay.
Sometimes drainage issues develop later when maybe a homeowner decides to add a fence or something like that after, you know, the home is built, or do some landscaping or something. But at least at the time the home is built, we would want it to, you know, follow the plan and make the water goes where it is. And so we would control that process by the individual site plans that would be required for the lot.
And Commissioner Cupid, that was the main point I was trying to make, was that I have no doubt that the builder will and staff will do it. It's the follow-on that we've had problems with.
Okay. Let me ask one more question, Commissioner Weatherford. Do you have a question? Not losing my train of thought. Oh, for decks, is that something that does not have to be permitted? So someone can deck out their entire property without having to get a county permit?
And I'll answer that question, Commissioner Cupid. A deck does have to be permitted,
That's what okay.
but a patio on the ground does not have to be
A
permitted.
patio on a, okay. So somebody could concrete their property without having a county permit?
That's correct.
Okay, that's it.
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
You know, I agree with what you're saying. The problem I see is if every lot in there met the standards, which is less than 45%, the problem that Commissioner Ott is referring to, and Commissioner Burrell's referring to, still exists. They could be at 40% below the impervious at 45. They could put a patio in tomorrow, we would never know about it, and it still exists.
That is true.
So this doesn't solve the problem by denying development.
That's a good point.
The problem is not the development and the fact that he's doing it properly. And stormwater management, who are our experts, agree with what he's doing.
That's true.
Who am I to deny that because they agree with it? The problem is greater than that in my mind. The problem is, how do we stop after building 2, 3, 5 years down the road? And I don't know how we can do that, but that will still exist whether it's 10% below or 20% below. They go put a big patio out there, then all of a sudden they are over the impervious surface and we're still gonna have the drain problem. So to me,
Maybe that's a separate issue.
that's a separate thing we ought to look at somewhere or another in community development to try to stop that. And maybe we should permit, to me, it seems foolish to permit a deck and not permit a patio, because a deck is pervious and a patio is impervious.
Well, I think the reason decks are permitted is because they have to be load bearing. And so you're checking.
So it's nothing to do with stormwater.
No, it mainly has to do with the fact that it has to be load bearing and you have to make sure it's safe. Whereas a patio, it's already on the ground.
Yeah, so maybe we ought to do that.
Okay, I think-
That's just my thought.
Items that require a building permit are dictated in the building codes established by the state.
All right, we're just sort of wandering the field here. One last comment from the commissioner, and I'll call the question.
Well, just referring back to Commissioner
make a
Ott's
motion.
statement that if you have a combined impervious not to exceed the 45%, like what you were saying, you're gonna, if you've got some that are over and they're allowed to put an outdoor grill or patio or whatever up to their amount, then their neighbor next door that's under that because of the combined ratio is not going to be able to do the same thing. They have to meet a more restrictive impervious than their neighbor. That's why we do it individual lots, typically.
Mr. Chairman, in all fairness, if this started out with a case on consent. We discussed, brought it back. And in fairness to the process, I wanted to make sure Mr. Korn had his opportunity to make a statement that while he supports this now, he's had a concern. But I did that in fairness and in acknowledging the process. But if I could be allowed to just address one issue with this that's being
Sure.
discussed, since I didn't really present this
No,
way,
in all
thinking it was
fairness,
going down that.
you know,
I just-
I think the good part is that because you did allow him, he brought up a concern that the
Sure.
board hears now, and I think that just best represents what we're supposed to be doing here, is hearing all
Sure.
sides. So with that, I have no problem making a comment. Sure, go ahead.
And I appreciate that very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify one issue here from a legal standpoint. I mean, discussing how we do this or how these concerns might be addressed is what you do. But the reason why this is not in front of the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals, seeking a variance as to an ordinance requirement of maximum of 45% per lot, is because there is no ordinance that says maximum 45% impervious surface per lot. That's not in the ordinance. RA6, everybody thinks it is. But for example, and it's like that in the other single-family residential districts, but for RA6, it simply says, and I'm quoting right here, maximum impervious surface shall not exceed 45%, period. Not per lot, just for that district, okay? Now, stormwater has applied that and interpreted that for recent times on a per lot basis, but it's not really part of the ordinance. In fact, when you go further and actually look up what does lot coverage mean, there's a specified definition of lot coverage in the zoning ordinance. In the definitions section, lot coverage, where you would think this would be, actually excludes, the definition of lot coverage excludes walkways, driveways, and things like that, and only applies to the principal structure. Impervious surface definition includes driveways, walkways, and so forth. So what you have is an issue in the code. That's why we were here in front of this board on another business agenda item as opposed to a variance, because we're not seeking a variance because there is no code that covers that. This has been a way that stormwater has addressed it going forward, and that's why this came up, and that's why you heard Mr. Heath speak to, when you heard him talking, he said, we're dealing with a code interpretation issue, and we felt like this was the best way to address that code interpretation issue with this development, is because you've got some bigger lots, you have some smaller lots. Across all of the lots that are being developed, you have 42.9% impervious. Across the entire subdivision, if you take the RA6 subdivision, this whole property is only going to be 27% impervious. The whole hydrology study that was performed in engineering and stormwater management that was performed, submitted, and engineered for this site and approved by this site takes into account down to the 100th of an acre how much impervious is being applied here and how much is accounted for. And further, in that regard, the detention ponds here should not have even been required. They actually qualified for fee in lieu. But because of the downstream issues that have occurred previously, Stormwater and Meritage Homes looked at this and said, nope, let's build the detention pond and make sure we're over detaining in this situation, even though they qualified for a different program. So the stormwater concerns are being addressed, and more so, and that's what Stormwater's done here. So I just want to clarify why we're here in the context, and if certainly y'all want to look at that for a code change, that'd be fine, but that's why we're here procedurally, okay?
And quite honestly, I'm glad it was pulled, because now we're having a really informative discussion. And I
Certainly.
think that's the real intent of this process, is that we
Sure it is.
provide all the facts so we can make an informed opinion. So I'm glad we pulled this to discuss this. Commissioner Ott.
Yeah, I just want to clarify Kevin's comments about lot coverage and impervious. That change, that is intentional. I was here when the board made the change, because what was happening was there was no distinction on the actual impervious items. And so when lot coverage does not include them, because lot coverage was designed to talk about the structure. But then it was identified pretty obviously that lot coverage did not address the impervious issues we were having, because we were having lots, especially like in Atlantic Country Club, that were teardowns, that were getting multiple driveways, driveways for this and driveway for that, sidewalks and everything. And so the board back then intentionally separated out lot coverage from impervious, so that, because impervious is what causes the water to run off of the property. Right. And the lot coverage was basically just about the structure. So that language is intentional.
Sure. Okay, Commissioner Cupid, I'll let you.
I'll turn
Well,
it back
thank
to
you
you
for
where it
that,
belongs.
because I
Mhm.
feel more confident in the decision
Sure.
that I'm going to make. I'm going to move that we do approve this other business item, and that there be notice given to property owners beyond just the lot table, and bear with me, per communication with the applicant. I'm going to add that each deed that is recorded for the initial sale to a homeowner shall state the maximum impervious area to help put everyone on notice. Also add the developer is required to disclose in the sales agreement the maximum impervious area of the lot and include a warning that the buyer may not be able to add any more impervious area. And ask that that be stated in either bold or capitalized text. All other staff comments and recommendations to be included that are not otherwise in conflict.
We have a second?
I second.
Okay, then now,
One question, I mean,
Sure.
can we do that? Because, I mean, I'd like to do it on conservation
We
easements and
can
everything else.
require, we can require deed restrictions on properties, but could you please just read that back to me real quick?
Sure, yes, ma'am. Each deed that is recorded for the initial sale to a homeowner shall state the maximum impervious area to help put everyone on notice. That's the first one.
My only concern with that, the way it's stated, as far as what the actual impervious is that we're gonna have closing attorneys that are doing deeds. So I think it might be clearer if you say there could be, there are impervious limitations on this property. Please see the table in the recorded deed.
Okay.
And that way they'll at least know what that is, and we don't have a closing attorney that's calculate, or, because they wouldn't have any way to calculate it other than referring back to that deed. I'm sorry, yes, thank you.
It's hard for me not to take advice of my county attorney on this matter. The whole purpose is just to put them on notice that impervious is an issue, and if you feel that could accomplish that, that would be great.
No, I think that it's fine requiring a statement on the deeds that there could be an impervious limitation on this property. Please see the plat which references the table per lot.
Okay.
And I think one thing that might help, and I know we don't know the page, the deed, the
Right.
plot book or whatever in page today, but I think that the builder, when they record the plat, will know what deed book and what page it goes in, and then Commissioner Cupid's statement will read exactly where it is located, so that they don't have to hunt, because they will know that before they sell any lots.
Okay.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I apologize to jump it a little bit, but I thought we tried to do something like this with conservation easements and stuff like that, because we run into buffer issues and stuff like that in the past. And what Commissioner Cupid is recommending, if it's feasible and allowed, I would certainly like to do that on any easements that we have in the future as well, on new developments. Let's go. I guess all I'm saying is, could you take a look at this in a broader sense and help us out? Because we run into not only impervious, but we run into easements that people have encroached on, and they come back before us in other business all the time. Buffers and things, that's what I mean. So I'd like to come up with a way that we can do some wording to put a little teeth into that.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to hijack your motion at all.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, the intent is to at least, again, to put notice to whoever purchased the property that there are potential limitations on the impervious surface. I think that your comment accomplishes that.
Yes.
It highlights that.
I agree. I just want to ensure, did the clerks have the comment that the attorney stated, so I don't have to repeat it? Okay, wonderful.
All right, so we got
that it?
a motion, we got a second, is there any discussion? Well, now call a question. That passes 3-2. All right, with that, I believe we're done.
Thank you.
Good.